The movie opens with an interrogation scene. A lieutenant named John is being questioned alongside his wife by a superior, Captain Stone. It is revealed that the city where they live has been exposed to a deadly virus, so the military steps in to monitor all civilian activity. The problem is, out of the 3,000 residents who were supposed to be quarantined, 500 managed to escape military surveillance. John, who had previously been assigned to monitor them, is suspected of deliberately letting those 500 people escape. Even though he denies the accusation, Captain Stone doesn't care and eventually sentences John.
About 5,000 people. Potential contagious bearers.
All left by the time my squad got there.
You chose this. I don't know what it was.
3 years later, John now lives in the middle of the forest and relies only on nature to survive. The events from 3 years ago have left him completely hopeless. Every now and then, he still remembers Captain Stone's cruelty toward the people in the city. Whenever he received information that someone was infected with the virus, Captain Stone would immediately execute them without conducting a medical examination first. During one of the executions, John suddenly showed up and tried to defend the civilian. However, his actions were considered an act of betrayal by Captain Stone and his fellow soldiers. On the way back, Captain Stone defended himself by saying that John's wife wasn't executed simply because of John's mistake, but because she had actually been confirmed to have the deadly virus. Hearing that explanation, John immediately argued against Captain Stone's claim. How could he, who spent every night with his wife while she was perfectly healthy, not get infected as well? Hearing this, Captain Stone was also confused because cases like this were extremely rare. Because of that, Captain Stone planned to send John to a military laboratory located on a warship. Unfortunately, that decision turned out to be a mistake, because that was when John tried to fight back so he could escape from Captain Stone's forces. Back in the present, John is relaxing when he is suddenly startled by a woman emerging from the middle of the forest. The woman looks extremely weak and has a wound on her stomach. Seeing her condition, John immediately helps her and carries her into his house. By morning, the woman John rescued has regained consciousness and introduces herself as Maria. John asks Maria not to talk too much because they need to remove the bullet lodged in her stomach before the wound becomes infected.
Are you a doctor, John?
No.
John is shocked when he sees that the bullet inside Maria's body is equipped with some kind of GPS device. However, before he can ask anything else, Maria passes out because she can't bear the pain. Seeing her condition, John immediately checks Maria's entire body and finds some kind of barcode on her wrist. John is convinced that the woman must be one of Captain Stone's prisoners who tried to escape. A short while later, while John is spending time chopping firewood, Maria comes outside while still looking weak. Maria wants to talk more with John because they didn't know each other before. However, John, who is still suspicious of Maria, immediately tells her that she can stay in his house. But once she recovers, Maria has to leave a few days later because John just wants to live alone.
Give me the axe. Keep them.
I will.
3 days later, what John feared finally happens. 3 soldiers under Captain Stone arrive and ask him where Maria is. At first, John doesn't answer their question and politely asks the 3 soldiers to leave. However, they don't leave right away, so John is forced to take action.
Found it under the mattress.
After killing Captain Stone's soldiers, John immediately buries them with Maria's help. Maria admits that she's impressed by John's abilities and becomes even more curious when John shows her the inside of his storage room. The man has secretly collected a large number of firearms. Maria asks why John keeps all those weapons. However, instead of getting an answer, Maria is given a mop and told to clean up the soldiers' blood. Meanwhile, Captain Stone is now watching the new recruits train alongside his 2 right-hand men, Grenett and Mason. They consider the new recruits too weak. So, Grenett steps in to teach them a lesson.
Come on!
Meanwhile, We go back to John, who is starting to worry because the soldiers have begun finding his hiding place. Even so, John doesn't have the heart to kick Maria out because she still looks weak. As a middle ground to keep them both safe, John asks Maria to help prepare some kind of defensive fortification as the sun begins to rise. Their relationship is also getting closer, so John starts opening up and telling her about his past, especially how his wife was killed by a superior based only on an assumption without any evidence.
So is love, John.
After spending the whole day exhausted from building the defensive fortification, John and Maria enjoy the night as usual. This is when Maria finally admits that she has been a research subject in the military laboratory for the past 6 months. The blood in her body has been confirmed to be usable as an antiviral vaccine capable of curing everyone in the city. Unfortunately, the research, which originally had good intentions, was corrupted by greedy officials. They want to sell the vaccine at a very high price, even though that goes against the original purpose of the research. Maria wants the vaccine to be given for free, so she decides to escape to stop their plan from succeeding. Now, John is the only hope left to fight Captain Stone for people, while also getting revenge for his wife's death. Knowing that they're up against highly professional soldiers, John starts training Maria to properly use firearms. They both understand the risks they have to face. So, rather than having to bathe in blood on the battlefield, it's better for them to sweat it out on the training field.
You know the saying.
A few hours after they finish training, 3 of Captain Stone's men suddenly attack John's home. At first, they think this enemy will be easy to deal with because the previous team's report said they had only found an ordinary carpenter. Apparently, Stone's men haven't realized that a carpenter can also be a dangerous opponent.
Good night.
Don't let me leave with her.
After successfully taking out the soldiers, John realizes that the next wave of troops will definitely come in greater numbers. John immediately prepares the weapons in his storage room, while asking Maria to pour gasoline around their house. Not only that, John also asks Maria to get water from the river as preparation, because the battle they're about to face seems like it will last a long time. But who would have thought Captain Stone's forces would arrive sooner than either of them expected, until finally... Luckily, John manages to save Maria just as Mason and his troops are about to take her away. Meanwhile, Mason, who is still alive, immediately reports to Captain Stone that there's a very brutal carpenter in the middle of the forest. Hearing the report, Captain Stone immediately gets angry because he can't believe his troops could be defeated by an ordinary carpenter. Meanwhile, John and Maria are still exchanging gunfire with Captain Stone's men, who keep arriving.
Bella.
Back to Captain Stone, who now sends Grenett and her troops into the middle of the forest to capture Maria and take down the carpenter. At that time, Captain Stone still doesn't realize that the carpenter who has taken out so many of his men is none other than John. Captain Stone tells Grenett not to kill Maria because she is both a vaccine and an extremely valuable asset. After that, Grenett's troops immediately enter the forest and approach the house. At this point, John truly shows his brutal side. Maria also becomes braver because she realizes that they won't be able to take her out that easily. Back to Captain Stone, who is starting to get angry because many of his troops still haven't returned. This time, Captain Stone orders his remaining troops to be more careful and raises the carpenter's threat level from an ordinary threat to an extremely dangerous one. Slowly but surely, the remaining troops approach John's house and discover piles of bodies inside the storage room. At the same time, Maria has actually been secretly waiting for them to arrive so she can give them a surprise. Meanwhile, John leaves the defensive perimeter and goes deeper into the forest to take out Captain Stone's forces before sunset. However, Mason suddenly appears and attacks him from behind. A fight breaks out between the two of them, It's clear that the young Mason is able to dominate the fight with ease. On top of that, John is starting to run out of energy because he's been fighting fiercely all this time. In the end, Mason manages to defeat John. Meanwhile, Maria is also cornered by Captain Stone's forces. However, something strange happens. Instead of taking Maria to Captain Stone, Mason takes her away through a tunnel. It's unclear what Mason is actually planning, but at the same time, Captain Stone, who is already furious, immediately receives a report about the betrayal and takes his anger out on one of his men.
Another was the cargo.
As a final move, Captain Stone once again asks Granite to prepare a strategy and lead the troops to take out John, Mason, and capture Maria. Meanwhile, Mason, who is still making his way through the tunnel, is suddenly startled by John's appearance. At first, Mason is confused about how the man is still alive, but there's no time to daydream. Mason is forced to face his senior once again with all his strength. After Mason is taken out, Maria immediately approaches John and asks what their next plan is. However, before he can answer, Granite suddenly appears and forces him to face her. In the middle of the battle, John realizes that his ammunition is running low. John then tells Maria to run deeper into the forest. Not long after, they find some kind of storage area with a steel door. John asks Maria to hide inside. Meanwhile, John will look for a way out so he can face Granite. John then immediately looks for a way out because it would be very difficult to face Granite's forces in the dark. However, as soon as John gets out, Captain Stone and his men are already waiting for him. Seeing that he's surrounded from all sides, John can't do much. Captain Stone immediately asks where Maria is. However, John lies and says that he has already killed Maria. Hearing this answer, of course Captain Stone doesn't believe him. Captain Stone says he'll keep torturing John until he tells him where Maria is. John still refuses to confess or reveal Maria's location. This makes Captain Stone even more furious. Unable to take it anymore, Captain Stone decides to end the interrogation and fight John one-on-one. At first, Captain Stone is very confident that he can defeat John because John's body is already covered in numerous wounds from the battles that have been going on since morning. However, the final result is completely different from what was expected because John is physically stronger than average. After Captain Stone is killed by John, Granite immediately takes position to kill him. However, Maria suddenly appears carrying 2 grenades. Maria threatens to blow them up if John is killed. In exchange for John's life, Maria then offers a deal. Maria is willing to surrender herself to the military on the condition that John's life is spared. Hearing the offer, Granite immediately agrees because the most important thing in this mission is Maria.
Is claimed. Taken.
3 months later, it is revealed that Maria has donated some of her blood to be turned into a vaccine. However, Maria secretly also sends a sample to John. Maria writes a letter asking John to make replicas of it and distribute the results to the public. The movie finally ends.